What would you do if your husband served you divorce papers at work, claiming you'd betrayed him with a coworker? How did helping with a simple work project turn into a scandal that cost me my marriage, my home, and nearly my daughter? I always thought he was being paranoid, until the evidence landed in my lap. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I deleted another string of messages from Joel. My fingers moved quickly across my phone screen, erasing the evidence of our late-night conversations about everything except work. Graham had been asking too many questions lately, and I couldn't afford to leave digital breadcrumbs. Working late again tonight, Eve. Joel Peterson appeared at my cubicle, his easy smile making my heart skip. At 33, he had that effortless charm that made everyone in the accounting firm gravitate toward him. His project manager position gave him legitimate reasons to stop by my desk, which made our growing friendship seem perfectly innocent. Just finishing up the quarterly reports, I lied smoothly, minimizing my personal email. Graham's picking up Mila from soccer practice, so I have some extra time. Joel leaned against my desk, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Want to grab coffee and go over those numbers? I found some discrepancies that might need your expertise. My pulse quickened. These coffee meetings had become the highlight of my week. Sure, let me just save this file. As we walked to the break room, I caught Sandra from HR watching us with raised eyebrows. Let her look. Joel and I were colleagues working on a project together. There was nothing inappropriate about two professionals discussing quarterly reports over coffee. So, how are things at home? Joel asked, stirring sugar into his cup. Graham still giving you grief about working late? I sighed dramatically. He's become so paranoid lately. Last night he actually asked to see my phone. Can you believe that? Like I'm some teenager sneaking around. That's rough. Trust is everything in a marriage. Joel's voice carried just the right note of sympathy. Maybe he's feeling neglected. You have been putting in a lot of extra hours. I'm building my career. Someone has to think about Mila's future. The words came out more bitter than I intended. Graham's comfortable in his little tech support bubble, but I want more for our family. Joel nodded, understanding. You deserve someone who supports your ambitions. Not everyone can handle being married to a strong, independent woman. His words warmed me more than the coffee. When was the last time Graham had called me strong or independent? These days, he barely looked up from his computer when I came home. I should probably head out, I said reluctantly, checking my watch. Graham will start timing my commute if I'm too late. Joel's hand brushed mine as he reached for my empty cup. Same time tomorrow? We still need to review the Henderson account. Absolutely. It's important work. The drive home gave me time to prepare my story. Graham would ask about my day, and I'd mention the quarterly reports and the Henderson account. All true, technically. I just wouldn't mention how Joel's laugh made me feel alive again, or how he actually listened when I talked about my dreams. Graham was loading the dishwasher when I walked into our suburban kitchen. At 35, my husband had settled into a comfortable routine that felt more like a rut every day. His brown hair was already thinning, and he'd gained weight since Mila was born. Next to Joel's athletic build and confident demeanor, Graham seemed diminished somehow. How was work? He asked without turning around. Busy. Joel and I are working on this complex project that's taking longer than expected. I kept my voice casual, matter of fact. Joel again. Graham's shoulders tensed slightly. Seems like you two are spending a lot of time together. He's the project manager, Graham. Of course we work together. I opened the refrigerator, more to avoid his gaze than because I was hungry. It's called collaboration. Maybe you'd understand if you ever tried to advance beyond tech support. The words hung in the air like a slap. Graham's hand stilled on the dishes, and I immediately regretted my tone. But before I could apologize, 7-year-old Mila bounded into the kitchen, Mommy, did you see my spelling test? I got all the words right. I pulled my daughter into a hug, grateful for the distraction. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Over Mila's head, I caught Graham watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Suspicion? Hurt? I turned my attention back to our daughter, pushing away the uncomfortable feeling that my husband was seeing more than I wanted him to. Later that evening, after Mila was in bed, I found Graham sitting at his computer in our home office. The blue glow of the screen illuminated his face as he scrolled through what looked like our cell phone account. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Checking our data usage. The bill was higher than usual this month." His fingers paused over the keyboard. "Lot of late-night activity on your line." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced a laugh. "Probably all those work emails. You know how demanding this project has been." "Right, the project." Graham finally looked at me, and something in his eyes made me step back. "Eve, if something was going on, something I should know about, you'd tell me, wouldn't you?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. This was my chance to come clean, to explain that Joel and I were just friends, that our conversations had gotten a little too personal, but nothing had actually happened. Instead, I felt my defenses slam into place. "What are you implying, Graham?" "That I'm lying to you." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly." "Well, it's insulting. I'm working my ass off to build a better future for our family, and instead of supporting me, you're acting like some jealous teenager." I crossed my arms, letting righteous indignation fuel my words. "Maybe if you showed half as much interest in my career as you do in our phone bill, we wouldn't have this problem." Graham's face went carefully blank, the way it did when he was processing something he didn't want to hear. "You're right. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just feeling a little left out lately." The apology should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it felt like victory. "I'm doing this for us, Graham. The overtime, the extra projects. It's all so we can give Mila the life she deserves. I know, and I appreciate it, really." He closed the laptop and stood up. "I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." As his footsteps faded down the hallway, I pulled out my phone to check for messages from Joel. 3 new texts, each one making me smile, despite the confrontation with Graham. "Hope you made it home safely. Thanks for staying late to work on the reports. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on the Henderson proposal tomorrow. Sweet dreams, Eve. Sleep well." I typed back quickly. "Thanks for being so understanding about everything. See you tomorrow." Then I deleted the entire conversation, just like I had every night for the past 3 weeks. Graham's suspicions were unfounded, but there was no point in giving him ammunition for his paranoid theories. As I headed upstairs, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright with excitement I hadn't felt in years. Working with Joel had reminded me who I used to be before marriage, and motherhood had dulled my edges. There was nothing wrong with feeling alive again. Nothing wrong with having a friend who appreciated my mind and my ambitions. Graham was just going to have to learn to trust me. But as I slipped into bed beside my sleeping husband, I couldn't shake the image of him scrolling through our phone records, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of discovery. Sunday dinner at Graham's parents' house had become a weekly ordeal I endured rather than enjoyed. Fiona Lorne, my 62-year-old mother-in-law, had perfected the art of passive-aggressive commentary disguised as concern. Her husband Ben, at 64, played the role of peacekeeper, though his efforts usually fell flat. "Eve looks tired," Fiona announced as she carved the roast, her nurse's training making her sound clinical. "Are you getting enough sleep, dear?" "I'm fine, Fiona, just busy with work." I forced a smile while helping Mila cut her meat. "We're in the middle of several important projects." "Ah, yes, the mysterious projects that keep you out so late." Fiona's tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. "Graham mentioned you've been working quite a bit of overtime." Graham shot his mother a warning look. "Mum, we've talked about this." "I'm just concerned about my granddaughter. Children need stability, routine. All this late-night work can't be good for family life. My sister Paula, who'd joined us for dinner, jumped to my defense. At 29, she was still single and fiercely protective of my right to have a career. Maybe Graham could help more with Mila's schedule instead of expecting Eve to handle everything. I handle plenty, Graham said quietly, his jaw tightening. Of course you do, son. Ben cleared his throat diplomatically. We all know how hard you both work. Maybe we could talk about something else. Mila, how's school going? But Fiona wasn't finished. It's just that in my day, we understood that marriage required sacrifice. You can't have everything, Eve. Something always suffers. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I felt my cheeks burn with a mixture of shame and anger. I'm not sacrificing anything, Fiona. I'm contributing to our family's financial security while pursuing meaningful work. I thought you'd understand, being a career woman yourself. I worked because we needed the money. There's a difference between necessity and ambition. The way she said ambition made it sound like a character flaw. Paula's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down hard. What's wrong with ambition? Eve is brilliant at her job. She deserves recognition and advancement, just like any man would. No one's questioning Eve's intelligence, Fiona replied smoothly. I'm questioning her priorities. Graham rubbed his temples. Can we please not do this today? Do what? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Have an honest conversation about the fact that your mother thinks I'm a terrible wife and mother. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I'm sorry my career is such an inconvenience to everyone. Maybe I should just quit and spend my days baking cookies and organizing playdates. Mila looked between the adults with wide, frightened eyes. The sight of her confusion cut through my anger, reminding me that my daughter was absorbing every word of this toxic exchange. I need some air, I muttered, stepping out onto the back porch. The October evening was crisp, the kind of weather that usually made me feel optimistic about new beginnings. Instead, I felt trapped between competing expectations that seemed impossible to satisfy. My phone buzzed with a text from Joel. How's family dinner? Hope you're having a better Sunday than I am. I typed back quickly. Your Sunday couldn't possibly be worse than mine. Want to talk about it? I'm just watching Netflix and feeling sorry for myself. The offer was tempting. Joel would listen without judgment, would remind me that I wasn't crazy for wanting more than suburban mediocrity. But Graham was already suspicious, and disappearing to take phone calls would only make things worse. Rain check? Dealing with in-law drama. Of course. You're stronger than you know, Eve. Don't let them dim your light. His words were exactly what I needed to hear. I deleted the conversation and went back inside, where the family had moved on to discussing Ben's retirement plans. Graham glanced at me as I sat down, but didn't comment on my phone usage. The rest of dinner passed in strained politeness. Fiona made pointed comments about the importance of being present for family time. Paula countered with stories about successful working mothers she knew. Graham grew quieter with each exchange, while Ben desperately tried to steer conversations toward neutral topics. During dessert, Mila spilled chocolate cake on her dress. As I helped clean her up, I overheard Fiona whispering to Graham in the kitchen. She's different lately. Distracted, and all this defensiveness about work. Fiona's voice trailed off meaningfully. Mom, please. Not now. I'm just saying, son. Sometimes when people become secretive about their activities, there's a reason. My blood turned to ice. Graham's mother wasn't just commenting on my work schedule. She was planting seeds of suspicion about my fidelity. The accusation was so far beyond the bounds of normal family tension that I felt physically sick. Are you okay, Mummy? Mila asked, looking up at me with concern. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. I forced a smile and finished cleaning her dress, my hands shaking slightly. The drive home was silent except for Mila's chatter about her upcoming school play. Graham stared straight ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, processing his mother's insinuations. After we put Mila to bed, Graham and I sat in our living room like strangers. He pretended to read while I scrolled through work emails on my laptop. The space between us felt vast and unbridgeable. "My mother was out of line tonight," he finally said. "Yes, she was." I didn't look up from my screen. "But Eve, she's not entirely wrong about you being different lately." Now I did look at him. "Different how?" "Distant, secretive. You used to tell me about your day, your coworkers, your projects. Now I get one-word answers and irritation when I ask questions. Maybe because every question feels like an interrogation. Or maybe because you're hiding something." The words hung between us like a challenge. I could have used this moment to explain about Joel, to clarify that our friendship had grown closer than I'd initially admitted, but remained entirely professional. Instead, I felt my defenses activate like armor. "I can't believe you're letting your mother poison your mind against me." "This isn't about my mother. This is about us, about the fact that my wife has become a stranger." "I'm the same person I've always been, Graham. Maybe you just never paid enough attention to notice who that was." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When was the last time you asked about my dreams, my goals, what I wanted out of life? You're perfectly content to coast along in your comfortable little routine, but some of us want more. I want our marriage to work. I want our daughter to have parents who actually like each other." "Then maybe you should start treating me like a partner instead of a suspect." Graham closed his book and stood up. "I'm going to bed. We can continue this conversation when you're ready to be honest." "I am being honest." But he was already walking away, leaving me alone with my laptop and my guilty conscience. I pulled out my phone to check for messages from Joel, needing the validation of someone who saw me as more than just a wife and mother going through a midlife crisis. "Hope your evening improved. Thinking of you." The simple message made my eyes water with relief. At least someone cared about my happiness. I typed back, "Thanks for being such a good friend. I don't know what I'd do without you." Then I deleted the conversation and went upstairs to bed, where Graham was already asleep with his back turned toward my side of the mattress. As I lay in the darkness, I told myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. Joel and I were friends, colleagues working on legitimate projects. If our conversations had become more personal, if I looked forward to seeing him more than I looked forward to coming home, if his compliments made me feel more alive than I'd felt in years, none of that constituted betrayal. But deep down, in the part of my mind I tried not to examine too closely, I knew that Graham's suspicions weren't entirely unfounded. I was keeping secrets, creating distance, choosing Joel's company over my husband's. The question was whether I cared enough to stop. The anonymous note appeared on my desk Tuesday morning, tucked under my keyboard, like a threat. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the message brief. "Everyone sees what's going on." My hands trembled as I crumpled the paper and shoved it into my purse. Someone at the office was watching Joel and me, drawing conclusions about our friendship. But what exactly did they think they saw? Two colleagues having coffee? Professional conversations that ran a little long? There was nothing scandalous about our interactions. "Morning, beautiful." Joel appeared at my cubicle with 2 cups of coffee, his usual Tuesday ritual. "You look upset. Everything okay?" "Just tired. Mila had nightmares last night." The lie came easily, a small deception to avoid the larger conversation about office gossip and suspicious notes. Joel set my coffee down and perched on the edge of my desk, a casual gesture that would have seemed innocent weeks ago. Now I was hyper-aware of how it looked, how close he sat, how his presence made my pulse quicken. "Want to talk about it? I'm a pretty good listener." "It's nothing, just normal family stuff." I forced a smile and took a sip of coffee, perfect with cream and 1 sugar, exactly how I liked it. Joel paid attention to details that Graham had stopped noticing years ago. "Well, if you need to vent, I'm here. Partners look out for each other, right? The word partners sent a warm flutter through my chest. Joel saw me as an equal, a collaborator, someone worth investing in professionally and personally. When was the last time Graham had made me feel valued? Eve Lawn, please report to HR. The intercom announcement made my stomach drop. Had someone complained about Joel and me? Filed some kind of report based on our coffee meetings and late-night project sessions? Probably just benefits paperwork, Joel said, but his eyes showed concern. I'll be here when you get back. Sandra from HR was waiting with a stack of forms that had nothing to do with my relationship with Joel. Annual performance reviews, updated emergency contacts, standard administrative tasks that should have relieved me. Instead, I felt paranoid and exposed, as if everyone in the building was watching my every move. How are things going with the Henderson project? Sandra asked conversationally as I filled out forms. Fine. Joel and I are making good progress. Joel's a great project manager, very dedicated to his work relationships. Something in her tone made me look up. Sandra was smiling, but her eyes held a knowing glint that made my skin crawl. We work well together, I said carefully. I'm sure you do. Just remember that office friendships can sometimes be misinterpreted by others, especially when they involve a lot of after-hours collaboration. The warning was subtle but unmistakable. I finished the paperwork quickly and returned to my desk, where Joel was waiting with concerned eyes and gentle questions about my meeting with HR. Nothing important, I lied. Just routine stuff. But the seed of anxiety had been planted. For the rest of the week, I found myself analyzing every interaction with Joel, every casual touch or lingering glance. Were we being too obvious? Had our friendship crossed some invisible line that everyone else could see but us? The paranoia followed me home, where Graham's questions became more specific and pointed. How's Joel doing? He asked over dinner Friday night, his tone carefully neutral. Fine, I guess. Why? Just wondering. You mention him a lot. I mention my coworkers. It's called having conversations about my day. Right, of course. Graham cut his chicken methodically, each slice precise and deliberate. It's just that you never really talked about work friends before. Now it's Joel this, Joel that. Joel thinks this project should be handled differently. Joel suggested a new approach to the quarterly reports. Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm sorry my professional relationships bore you. They don't bore me, they concern me. Why? Because I'm finally working with someone who values my input. Because my wife is spending more time talking about another man than she spends talking to me. The accusation hung in the air like a slap. Mila looked up from her mashed potatoes, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand its source. That's ridiculous, Graham. Joel is a colleague. We work together. I'm sorry if my having a successful professional relationship threatens your ego. This isn't about ego, isn't it? You're perfectly happy when I'm stuck in my little cubicle with no one to talk to but the filing cabinets. But the moment I develop a working relationship with someone who actually appreciates my skills, suddenly I'm the problem. I appreciate your skills. When? When was the last time you asked about my projects, my goals, my ideas? You treat my job like a hobby that keeps me busy while you handle the important stuff. Graham's face went pale. That's not true. Isn't it? You tune out every time I try to discuss work, but let me mention Joel's name and suddenly you're all ears. Because something feels wrong, Eve. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way you light up when you talk about him. I light up because someone finally recognizes my potential. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm sorry that bothers you. Maybe you should examine why your wife being happy at work makes you so uncomfortable. Mummy, why are you yelling? Mila's small voice cut through my anger like a knife. I looked down at my daughter's frightened face and felt a wave of shame. I'm not yelling, sweetheart. Daddy and I are just having a discussion about work. It sounds like yelling. Graham reached over to squeeze Mila's hand. You're right, Princess. We should save grown-up discussions for after bedtime. The rest of dinner passed in strained silence. I helped Mila with her homework, while Graham cleaned the kitchen, both of us maintaining the facade of normalcy for our daughter's sake. But the accusations lingered in the air like smoke, poisoning every interaction. Later that evening, after Mila was asleep, I found Graham in his office again, this time reviewing what looked like our credit card statements. "Now, what are you investigating?" I asked, unable to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "These coffee charges. 3, sometimes 4 times a week at the cafe near your office. When did you start drinking so much coffee?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced a laugh. "Since I started working longer hours on complex projects. Caffeine is a necessity, not a luxury." "Expensive necessity. $12 for coffee?" "I usually grab a sandwich too. It's called lunch, Graham. People eat it." "At 3 in the afternoon. When I'm too busy to take a proper lunch break, yes." I crossed my arms defensively. "Are you seriously monitoring my coffee consumption now?" "I'm trying to understand why my wife's behavior has changed so dramatically." "My behavior hasn't changed. Your paranoia has." "Eve, I'm not stupid. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the defensive attitude every time I ask a simple question. They're not secret phone calls, they're work calls. Joel and I are collaborating on several projects that require frequent communication. At 10 o'clock at night. When necessary, yes. Some of us take our professional responsibilities seriously." Graham stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Are you having an affair?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "How dare you?" "It's a simple question, Eve. Are you having an affair with Joel?" "No." "God, Graham, how can you even ask me that?" "Because my wife has become a stranger. Because you're more excited about going to work than coming home. Because you delete your text messages and take phone calls in the other room. I delete messages to free up storage space. I take calls in the other room so I don't disturb you. Everything has an innocent explanation if you're not determined to find conspiracy theories." "Then show me your phone." The request was reasonable, the kind of transparency that healthy marriages were built on. If I had nothing to hide, handing over my phone should have been easy. Instead, I felt cornered and exposed. Absolutely not. "Why?" "Because I'm not a child, Graham. I'm your wife, and I deserve basic trust and respect. The fact that you think you have the right to search through my personal communications shows exactly how little you think of me." "I think the world of you. That's why this is so hard." "No, you think I'm a liar and a cheat. There's a difference." Graham's shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "I don't want to think that, but I don't know what else to think anymore." "Maybe you could try thinking that your wife is a professional woman with legitimate work relationships. Maybe you could try supporting my career instead of sabotaging it with paranoid accusations." "I'm not trying to sabotage anything." "Then stop acting like a jealous teenager and start acting like a husband who trusts his wife." I stormed out of the office and went upstairs to bed, leaving Graham alone with his suspicions and his credit card statements. My phone buzzed with a text from Joel. "Hope you have a relaxing weekend. You've been working so hard lately." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thanks. Looking forward to Monday." "Me too. Sweet dreams, Eve." As I deleted the conversation, I caught a glimpse of myself in the bedroom mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright with the kind of excitement that had nothing to do with work projects and everything to do with the man who sent me sweet dreams texts. Graham was right to be suspicious. Maybe not about the specific details, but about the fundamental shift in my priorities and affections. I wasn't having a physical affair, but I was having an emotional one. I was sharing my thoughts, dreams, and frustrations with Joel instead of my husband. I was looking forward to his company more than my family's. But acknowledging the truth would mean giving up the one relationship that made me feel alive and valued. It would mean returning to the grey routine of a marriage that had lost its spark years ago. So instead, I buried the guilt and focused on the injustice of Graham's accusations. I was the victim here, the misunderstood wife, whose professional success was being undermined by a paranoid husband. It was easier than admitting that maybe, just maybe, Graham's fears weren't entirely unfounded. The notebook appeared on Graham's nightstand, like evidence in a criminal case. I discovered it Tuesday morning while looking for my earrings. A small black journal filled with dates, times, and carefully documented observations about my behavior. October 3rd, Eve, home at 8:47 p.m., claims overtime on Henderson project. October 5th, phone call at 10:15 p.m., went to guest room to talk October 8th. Coffee charge $14.67, 3:30 p.m., said she was in meetings all afternoon. My hands shook as I flipped through pages of my husband's meticulous record-keeping. Graham had been documenting my activities for weeks, building a case against me with the methodical precision of a detective. The level of surveillance felt like a violation, but the accuracy of his observations made my stomach churn with guilt. Find what you were looking for? I spun around to find Graham standing in the doorway, already dressed for work. His expression was calm, almost resigned, as if he'd expected me to discover his documentation eventually. What is this? I held up the notebook with trembling fingers. Insurance. Insurance against what? Against gaslighting, against being told I'm paranoid when I have legitimate concerns about my wife's behavior. The word gaslighting hit me like a slap. I'm not gaslighting you, Graham. I'm trying to live my life without constant surveillance and suspicion. Then explain the discrepancies. What discrepancies? Graham took the notebook and flipped to a recent entry. Last Thursday, you said you were in back-to-back meetings all afternoon, but your coffee charge was at 3:30, and according to your office's online calendar, you had no scheduled meetings after 2 p.m. Heat flooded my cheeks. Maybe the calendar wasn't updated. Maybe the meeting was informal. Maybe you were having coffee with Joel and lying about it. I don't have to lie about having coffee with a colleague. You do if it's not really about work. The accusation hung between us like a loaded weapon. I could have admitted that yes, Joel and I had been meeting more frequently, that our conversations had grown more personal, that I looked forward to those coffee breaks more than I should. Instead, I felt my defenses slam into place. I can't believe you're stalking me like some kind of private investigator. I'm documenting patterns because my wife has become a stranger, and I need to understand why. I'm the same person I've always been. No, Eve, you're not. Graham's voice was quiet but firm. The woman I married didn't delete text messages or take mysterious phone calls. She didn't work late 4 nights a week, or come home looking guilty when I asked about her day. I look guilty because you're treating me like a criminal. I'm treating you like someone who's hiding something, because you are. The truth of his words made me lash out harder. What I'm hiding is my frustration with this marriage. What I'm hiding is how suffocated I feel by your constant need to control and monitor me. Graham flinched as if I'd struck him. I don't want to control you. I want to understand you. Then maybe you should have tried understanding me before you started documenting me like a lab specimen. I threw the notebook back on the nightstand and stormed out of the bedroom, leaving Graham alone with his careful records and his accurate suspicions. The confrontation had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Seeing my behavior laid out in black and white made it impossible to deny that something had shifted in my priorities and loyalties. At work, I found myself analyzing every interaction with Joel through the lens of Graham's surveillance. When Joel brought me coffee, was someone watching? When we stayed late to work on reports, was Graham timing my arrival home? The paranoia was exhausting, but it also felt justified. My husband had turned our marriage into a police investigation. You seem tense today, Joel observed during our afternoon coffee break. Everything okay at home? We were sitting in our usual corner booth at the cafe, close enough that our knees touched under the small table. The intimacy of the moment wasn't lost on me, especially knowing that Graham had documented similar meetings in his notebook. Graham's been acting strange lately, suspicious. He actually accused me of having an affair. Joel's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? That's ridiculous. I know, right? Just because we work together and get along well, he's decided there's something inappropriate going on. Some people have trouble understanding that men and women can be friends and colleagues without it being sexual. Exactly. It's so insulting. Like I can't have a professional relationship without it being about sex. Joel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. You don't deserve to be treated with suspicion for having friends. His touch sent warmth shooting up my arm, a reaction that would have been perfectly innocent weeks ago, but now felt charged with meaning. I should have pulled my hand away, should have maintained professional boundaries, but the comfort of his touch felt too good to abandon. Thanks for understanding. Sometimes I feel like you're the only person who really sees me. I do see you, Eve. I see how brilliant you are, how dedicated, how much you have to offer. Anyone who doesn't appreciate that is an idiot. The compliment made my chest flutter with pleasure. When was the last time Graham had called me brilliant? When had he last acknowledged my professional accomplishments or personal worth? I should probably get back, I said reluctantly, finally pulling my hand away from Joel's. Graham's been timing my breaks. That's really unhealthy behavior, Eve. You shouldn't have to live under surveillance. I know, but what choice do I have? He's convinced himself that I'm up to something, so everything I do gets filtered through that assumption. Joel's expression grew serious. You always have choices. No one should have to live in a relationship built on mistrust and control. His words followed me home, where I found Graham waiting in the kitchen with dinner already prepared. The gesture should have been sweet, but it felt calculated, another data point in his ongoing investigation of my behavior. How was work? He asked as we sat down to eat. Fine, busy. I kept my answers short, unwilling to provide more material for his documentation. Any progress on the Henderson project? Some. Joel still helping with that? The question was casual, but I could hear the trap in it. Graham was fishing for information, looking for inconsistencies in my story. Among other things, yes. Must be a complex project to require so much collaboration. It is. Mila looked between her parents with confusion. Why are you guys talking so weird? We're not talking weird, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. We're just tired. But Mila was right. Our conversations had become stilted and strategic, each of us measuring our words like chess players, planning several moves ahead. The easy intimacy of our early marriage had been replaced by careful politeness and underlying suspicion. Later that evening, I found Graham back in his office, adding new entries to his notebook. The sight of him documenting our dinner conversation made my blood boil. Are you seriously writing down everything I say now? Graham looked up calmly. I'm keeping track of patterns. Tonight you gave me 4 one-word answers about work and deflected every question about Joel. That's a pattern. Maybe the pattern is that I'm tired of being interrogated in my own home. Or maybe the pattern is that you're hiding something and getting defensive when I ask normal questions about your day. Normal husbands don't keep surveillance notebooks about their wives. Normal wives don't become secretive and distant without explanation. The circular argument was exhausting. Every accusation led to a counter-accusation. Every explanation was met with skepticism. We were trapped in a cycle of mistrust that seemed impossible to break. I can't do this anymore, Graham. I can't live under constant suspicion and surveillance. Then give me a reason to trust you again. I shouldn't have to prove my innocence. Trust is supposed to be the foundation of marriage. Trust goes both ways, Eve. And right now, you're not acting like someone who deserves it. The words cut deep because they contained a grain of truth I didn't want to acknowledge. I wasn't acting like someone who deserved trust. I was keeping secrets, maintaining emotional intimacy with another man, and lying about the nature of my relationship with Joel. But admitting that would mean facing the reality of what I'd become and what I'd put at risk. It would mean choosing between the marriage I'd built and the connection that made me feel alive. So instead, I retreated to the guest room, claiming I needed space to think. Graham didn't follow. didn't try to bridge the growing distance between us. He just returned to his notebook, documenting another evening of evasion and conflict. As I lay in the unfamiliar bed, I pulled out my phone and found a text from Joel waiting for me, thinking about our conversation today. You deserve so much better than what you're getting at home. The message was a lifeline, validation that my feelings were justified and my situation was unfair. I typed back quickly, "Thank you for seeing me. I don't know what I'd do without your friendship. You'll never have to find out. I'm here for you, whatever you need." I deleted the conversation and tried to sleep, but Graham's notebook entries kept running through my mind. The dates, times, and observations painted a picture of a woman leading a double life, prioritizing another man's attention over her husband's peace of mind. The evidence was damning because it was accurate. Graham wasn't paranoid or controlling. He was observant and methodical. He'd simply documented the truth I didn't want to face, that I was emotionally unfaithful and getting deeper in with every passing day. But acknowledging that truth would mean giving up the one relationship that made me feel valued and alive. It would mean returning to a marriage that had lost its spark, with a husband who saw me as a suspect rather than a partner. The choice should have been obvious. Instead, it felt impossible. The courier arrived at my office on a Thursday morning, interrupting my review of the quarterly reports that had become my cover story for everything. Sandra from HR directed the uniformed woman to my cubicle, where she handed me a thick manila envelope with my name printed in block letters. "Evadne Lorne?" "Yes, that's me. Please sign here." My hands shook as I scrawled my signature, accepting the package that felt heavy with implications. The courier left without explanation, leaving me staring at the envelope like it might explode. Joel appeared at my desk before I could open it. "What's that? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I don't know yet." I tore open the envelope and pulled out a stack of legal documents. The letterhead made my stomach drop. Peterson, Walsh and Associates, Family Law Attorneys. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Graham Michael Lorne versus Evadne Marie Lorne. The words blurred as I scanned the pages. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, temporary custody arrangements. Graham was divorcing me, and he'd had me served at work, in front of my colleagues, with maximum humiliation. "Oh my God," I whispered, sinking into my chair. Joel leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. "He's actually divorcing you. That's extreme, isn't it?" "I can't believe he did this. I can't believe he had me served here, where everyone can see." "What does it say about custody?" I flipped through the pages with trembling fingers until I found the section that made my blood turn to ice. "He's requesting primary custody of Mila. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother." "Based on what?" "I don't know. It just says detailed evidence to be presented at hearing." "What evidence? What could he possibly have?" Joel's face had gone pale. "Eve, we need to talk, privately." He led me to the empty conference room, closing the door behind us. The space felt suddenly intimate and dangerous, as if Graham might be watching through the windows. "This is serious," Joel said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "If he's filing for divorce and requesting custody, he thinks he has something concrete." "Like what?" "I'm a good mother. I work hard. I provide for my family." "That's not what this is about, and you know it." The words hung between us like an accusation. Joel was right. This wasn't about my parenting or my work ethic. This was about the elephant in the room that we'd been dancing around for weeks. "Joel, we haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't we?" The question forced me to confront the truth I'd been avoiding. "We're friends, colleagues. We work together." "Eve, look at me." Joel's voice was gentle but firm. "Really look at me and tell me that's all this is." I met his eyes and felt the familiar flutter of attraction, the connection that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or project management. Because if we're just colleagues, then why do I look forward to seeing you more than anything else in my day? Why do I think about you when I'm at home? Why does the thought of your husband taking you away from me make me feel sick? His confession should have thrilled me. Weeks ago, it would have validated everything I'd been feeling, confirmed that our connection was mutual and meaningful. Instead, it felt like the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. "This is my fault," I said, slumping into a conference room chair. "I let this happen. I let our friendship become something more. We both let it happen. The question is, what do we do now?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Graham's name appeared on the screen, and I knew this conversation would determine the trajectory of everything that followed. "Hello, Graham. Did you get the papers?" His voice was calm, businesslike, as if he were discussing a work project rather than the dissolution of our marriage. "Yes, I got them. At work, in front of everyone. Thank you for that humiliation. I figured a public setting would prevent you from having one of your emotional outbursts." "Emotional outbursts? Is that what you call my reaction to being ambushed with divorce papers?" "I call it a predictable response to being held accountable for your choices." Joel was watching me with concern, able to hear only my side of the conversation, but clearly understanding its gravity. "What choices, Graham? What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you of anything, Eve. I'm documenting facts. Facts that will be presented in court, if necessary." "What facts?" "Phone records showing hundreds of text messages between you and Joel Peterson. Credit card statements documenting your coffee dates. Security footage from your office building showing you leaving together after hours. Should I continue?" My blood turned to ice. Graham hadn't just been keeping a notebook. He'd been conducting a full investigation. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting my interests, and my daughter's interests." "I'm her mother." "You're a woman who's been lying to her family for months while carrying on an emotional affair with a coworker." The words hit me like physical blows. Even hearing them spoken aloud, I wanted to deny them, to claim that Graham was exaggerating or misunderstanding innocent interactions. "It's not an affair. Joel and I are friends. Friends don't delete text messages. Friends don't lie about their activities. Friends don't choose each other's company over their families." Joel was staring at me with growing alarm, finally understanding the depth of Graham's evidence and the seriousness of my situation. "Graham, can we please discuss this at home, like adults, like the married couple we still are?" "We're not a married couple anymore, Eve. We're two people who share a child and are negotiating the terms of our separation." "I don't want a separation. I want to work on our marriage." "Then you should have thought of that before you started working on your relationship with Joel." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in shock. Graham had never spoken to me with such cold finality, such complete emotional detachment. The man I'd married, the father of my child, had become a stranger armed with evidence and legal representation. "What did he say?" Joel asked. "He has everything. Phone records, credit card statements, security footage. He's been building a case against me for weeks." Joel ran his hands through his hair. "This is bad, Eve. Really bad." "What am I going to do? He's trying to take Mila away from me." Maybe we should cool things off for a while. Give you space to work on your marriage." The suggestion felt like abandonment. "You want to end our friendship?" "I want you to keep your daughter, and if that means stepping back from whatever this is between us, then that's what we should do." "So you're just going to walk away? After everything you said about being there for me?" "I am being there for you, by recognizing that I'm part of the problem." Joel's sudden retreat felt like a betrayal, confirmation that our connection had been more fragile than I'd believed. When faced with real consequences, he was choosing self-preservation over loyalty. "I need to go home," I said, gathering the divorce papers with shaking hands. "I need to see Mila." "Eve, wait." But I was already walking away, leaving Joel in the conference room with his guilt and his sudden desire for distance. The man who'd made me feel alive and valued had disappeared the moment our relationship became inconvenient. The drive home was a blur of tears and panic. Graham's methodical documentation of my activities played through my mind like a prosecutor's closing argument. Every deleted text, Every lie about working late, every moment of intimacy with Joel had been recorded and catalogued. I'd told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, that emotional connection wasn't betrayal, that Graham was being paranoid and controlling. But seeing the evidence laid out in legal documents forced me to confront the truth. I had been unfaithful. Maybe not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, in every way that mattered. And now I was going to lose everything. The house was empty when I arrived, Graham and Mila nowhere to be found. A note on the kitchen counter explained their absence. Mila is with my parents. We need space to process the situation without involving her in adult conflicts. Even in crisis, Graham was thinking about our daughter's well-being, while I'd been thinking about my own emotional needs. The realization cut deeper than any legal document could. I called Paula, desperate for support and validation. My sister arrived within an hour, armed with wine and righteous indignation. "He can't just take Mila away from you," Paula declared, pouring generous glasses of Chardonnay. "You're her mother. Courts don't separate children from their mothers over workplace friendships." "It's more than a workplace friendship, Paula. Graham's right about that." "So what? You found someone who appreciates you, who makes you feel alive again. That doesn't make you a bad mother." I lied to my husband for months. I chose another man's company over my family's. I deleted evidence and gaslit Graham when he asked legitimate questions about my behavior. Paula waved dismissively. "Marriage is hard. People grow apart. You're allowed to find happiness wherever you can." But her words felt hollow in the face of Graham's evidence and Joel's sudden abandonment. I'd convinced myself that I was the victim of an unsupportive husband and a stagnant marriage. The reality was that I'd been the architect of my own destruction, making choices that prioritized my emotional needs over my family's stability. When Graham finally came home that evening, he found me sitting at the kitchen table with the divorce papers spread in front of me like a tarot reading predicting disaster. "Where's Mila?" I asked. "Safe, away from this mess." "She's my daughter, too." "Then maybe you should have considered that before you decided to prioritize Joel over your family." The accusation was fair and devastating. "Graham, please, can we talk about this? Can we try counseling or—" "It's too late for counseling, Eve. I've already filed the papers. I've already consulted with attorneys. This marriage is over." "Because of Joel?" "Because of you. Joel was just the symptom. The disease was your complete disregard for our marriage vows and our family's well-being." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to claim that Graham was being unreasonable and vindictive. But the evidence was sitting right in front of me, documented in legal language that left no room for interpretation or excuse. I'd destroyed my marriage, betrayed my husband's trust, and put my daughter's stability at risk. All for a man who'd walked away the moment things got complicated. The reckoning had arrived, and I had no one to blame but myself. The family court building felt like a mausoleum, all marble floors and echoing hallways that amplified every whispered conversation. I sat in the waiting area outside the mediation room, my lawyer beside me, shuffling through papers with the kind of grim efficiency that suggested she'd seen this story before. "Remember, Mrs. Lorne, the goal today is to reach an agreement without going to trial. Your husband's attorney has indicated they're willing to negotiate, which is good news." Good news. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Nothing about this situation qualified as good news. 3 weeks had passed since Graham served me with divorce papers. 3 weeks of living in a hotel room and seeing my daughter only during supervised visits. 3 weeks of watching my life disintegrate while Joel avoided me at work and my sister assured me that everything would work out fine. "What kind of agreement?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be devastating. "Joint custody with him having primary physical custody. You'd get Mila every other weekend and 1 evening per week. Given the circumstances, it's actually quite generous." Generous. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Seeing my daughter 4 days a month was supposed to be generous. The mediation room door opened, and Graham emerged with his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she ate cheating spouses for breakfast. Graham himself looked different, leaner, more focused, like he'd shed not just weight, but also the soft uncertainty that had characterized our later years together. "Mrs. Lorne, we're ready for you." The mediation room was sterile and windowless, designed to strip away emotion and focus on facts. Graham sat across from me at a conference table that felt as wide as an ocean, his expression carefully neutral as his attorney arranged documents with theatrical precision. "Let's begin with the evidence," Graham's attorney said, opening a thick folder. "We have here phone records showing 847 text messages between Mrs. Lorne and Joel Peterson over a 3-month period." 847. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd known Joel and I texted frequently, but seeing it quantified made the extent of our emotional intimacy undeniable. Additionally, we have credit card statements showing 23 separate charges at Cafe Luna during work hours, always in amounts consistent with purchasing 2 beverages and often food items. 23 coffee dates. 23 times I'd chosen Joel's company over my family's financial priorities, spending money we'd budgeted for household expenses on romantic interludes disguised as work meetings. Security footage from Mrs. Lorne's office building shows her leaving with Mr. Peterson after hours on 16 separate occasions. The evidence kept coming, each piece more damning than the last. Bank records showing cash withdrawals that corresponded to restaurant charges. Email timestamps proving I'd lied about working late when I was actually having dinner with Joel. Even a sworn affidavit from Joel himself, admitting to the emotional nature of our relationship. Mr. Peterson was very cooperative once we explained the legal implications of his involvement with a married woman, Graham's attorney said with a slight smile. He provided a detailed statement about the nature of your relationship. My lawyer leaned over to whisper in my ear, "Did you know he was going to testify against you?" I shook my head, too stunned to speak. Joel had thrown me under the bus to protect himself, confirming every detail of our emotional affair while painting himself as an unwilling participant who'd been led astray by an unhappy wife. "Now, regarding Mrs. Lorne's fitness as a parent," Graham's attorney continued, "we have documentation showing a pattern of deception, financial irresponsibility, and prioritizing her relationship with Mr. Peterson over her daughter's emotional well-being." She pulled out Mila's school records, highlighting the decline in my daughter's grades and the teacher's notes about her increased anxiety and distraction at home. Mila's teacher reported that the child frequently mentioned her parents fighting and expressed confusion about why Mommy was always working late. The words cut through me like knives. My 7-year-old daughter had been absorbing the toxicity of my choices, carrying the weight of adult conflicts she couldn't understand or control. "Mrs. Lorne," the mediator said gently, "would you like to respond to any of these allegations?" I looked across the table at Graham, searching for some trace of the man I'd married, some flicker of the love we'd once shared. Instead, I found the cold gaze of someone who'd been methodically betrayed and was now seeking methodical justice. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it did happen," Graham's attorney replied. "The question now is how to minimize the damage to the child." My lawyer tried to mount a defense, arguing that emotional infidelity didn't constitute grounds for limiting my parental rights, that I'd been a devoted mother despite my marital problems. But every argument sounded hollow against the mountain of evidence Graham had compiled. "My client is willing to agree to joint legal custody," my lawyer said, "with a more equitable physical custody arrangement. Perhaps alternating weeks?" Graham's attorney shook her head. Given Mrs. Lorne's demonstrated inability to prioritize her daughter's needs over her own desires, my client feels that primary custody is in the child's best interest. "That's not fair," I said, finally finding my voice. "I love Mila. I've always put her first. Have you? Graham spoke for the first time since we'd entered the room. When you were deleting text messages so she wouldn't see them? When you were lying about working late while she asked why Mummy wasn't home for dinner? When you were having emotional conversations with another man instead of reading her bedtime stories? Each question was a dagger, accurate and devastating. I had put my emotional needs ahead of my daughter's stability, had chosen the thrill of Joel's attention over the responsibility of being present for my family. Graham, please, I said, tears streaming down my face. I made mistakes, I know that. But don't punish Mila by taking her away from her mother. I'm not taking her away from you. I'm protecting her from the chaos you created. The mediator called for a recess, giving me time to compose myself and consider Graham's offer. In the hallway, my lawyer was blunt about our options. They have you dead to rights, Eve. The evidence is overwhelming, and frankly, your husband's proposal is more generous than what you'd get if this went to trial. What about fighting for more custody time? With what? Joel's affidavit confirms the emotional affair. The financial records show deception. Your daughter's school records demonstrate the impact on her well-being. A judge would look at this evidence and likely give you even less time than what's being offered. The reality hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd gambled everything on a relationship that had evaporated the moment it became inconvenient, and now I was facing the consequences of choices I'd convinced myself were justified. When we reconvened, I signed the papers with shaking hands. Primary custody to Graham. Every other weekend and Wednesday evenings for me. Division of assets heavily favoring the parent who'd remained faithful to the marriage. Alimony payments that would barely cover a studio apartment. There's one more thing, Graham's attorney said as we prepared to leave. My client has prepared a statement he'd like to read. Graham pulled out a folded piece of paper, his hand steady as he began to read. Eve, I want you to know that this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting our daughter and rebuilding our lives after the damage you caused. I tried to save our marriage. I asked questions, expressed concerns, and gave you multiple opportunities to be honest about your relationship with Joel. Instead, you chose to lie, gaslight, and manipulate rather than confront the truth about your choices. His voice remained calm and measured, which somehow made his words more devastating than if he'd shouted. You convinced yourself that I was paranoid and controlling, that your emotional affair was justified by my supposed neglect. But the evidence shows that I was observant and concerned, and that your affair was a choice you made repeatedly over the course of months. I wanted to interrupt, to defend myself, but the mediator gestured for silence. Mila will always know that she has a mother who loves her, but she'll also grow up understanding that actions have consequences, that marriage vows mean something, and that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Graham folded the paper and looked directly at me for the first time since the proceedings began. I hope someday you'll understand that this isn't punishment, it's accountability, and maybe, if you're capable of real change, we can eventually co-parent effectively for Mila's sake. The finality in his voice made it clear that any hope of reconciliation was dead. Graham had moved beyond anger into a cold determination to protect himself and our daughter from further damage. As we left the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of myself in the building's glass doors. The woman staring back looked haggard and defeated, a far cry from the confident professional who'd convinced herself that she deserved better than her suburban life. My phone buzzed with a text from Paula. How did it go? Ready to celebrate your freedom? Freedom. The word felt like a cruel joke. I'd traded a stable marriage and daily access to my daughter for the fleeting validation of a man who'd abandoned me the moment things got complicated. I deleted Paula's message without responding and walked to my car, where I sat for a long time staring at the courthouse steps. Other couples were arriving for their own reckonings, carrying folders of evidence and accusations, preparing to dismantle the lives they'd built together. Some of them, I realized, might be victims of genuine abuse or neglect. People who'd made the difficult but necessary choice to leave destructive relationships. Others, like me, were facing the consequences of their own selfishness and poor judgment. The difference was crucial, even if the outcome looked the same. That evening, I sat in my hotel room reviewing the custody agreement, calculating how many days per month I'd see my daughter, how many bedtime stories I'd miss, how many school events would happen without me. The cost of my choices had finally come due, and the price was everything I'd claimed to value most. Graham had been right all along. I'd been living a double life, prioritizing my emotional needs over my family's stability, lying to myself and everyone else about the true nature of my relationship with Joel. The evidence had been overwhelming, because the evidence had been true. Now I was alone with the consequences, facing a future I'd never imagined when I'd first accepted Joel's invitation for coffee, and convinced myself it was just help with a work project.